Welcome everyone. This week we wrap up symbolism. Let's quote Manly P. Hall to begin. Still, the great spiritual truths are not so deeply concealed as might be supposed. Most of them are exposed to view at all times, but are not recognized because of their concealment in symbol and allegory. When the human race learns to read the language of symbolism, a great veil will fall from the eyes of men, and they shall then know the truth, and more than that, they shall realize that from the beginning, truth has been in the world, unrecognized save by a small but gradually increasing number appointed by the lords of the dawn as ministers to the needs of human creatures, struggling to regain their consciousness of divinity. Love that. If you'd like to skip ahead and go directly to the reading of the book, just click the little blue timestamp down below. And I have started putting the chapters in, so you can click ahead directly to the chapters. Check the show notes down below, because I love you. Welcome to the new subscribers. Welcome, you guys. Thank you. We're heading at lightning speed, snail's pace, to 1630. That's a big deal. Hello, dear Daphne. Thank you. Your comment means the world to me. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you, Chris and Jonathan and Gian. It's good to see you here. Petri, thank you guys. I love you and I appreciate you. Please, 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 if you get anything out of these videos, please like, subscribe, and share, because that gets them out into the world where they need to be, in our world of today. This is a labor of love, both by me and by Eddie. Symbolism is the language of the mystery teachings. That's what we are talking about today, and we're going to continue through volume 3. We're on page 16 on the dangers of the misunderstanding and misinterpreting symbols. This is very important, especially the animal sacrifice, so stick around, please. We're in Unfolding Consciousness, Exploring the Living Universe and the Intelligent Powers in Nature and Humans, written down lovingly by Dr. Eddie Villamoria. Links to the ebooks are down below. They are only $24.99 in most local currencies. And this is book study 47. We're going to go to 52, I think. We're going to go to 52 to a whole year of these weekly studies. And don't forget, if you want to get the 4-volume set, it's a big, big, big collection here. If you'd like to do that, just type "I want my copy!" in the Shepard Walwyn website order box in your little cart there. That's only through the Shepard Walwyn website. So let's go for it. Our yellow post-it study notes for today are Mayhem Caused by Dead Letter Interpretation. Richard Dawkins takes allegories literally. Why the highest teachings were never initially written down. They weren't. Bizarre notions concerning relics all over the world, in the East and in the West. Animal sacrifice is a gross distortion of spiritual precepts. It is. This is so important. Spiritual wisdom is inversely proportional to its abuse. And the dangers of symbolism, misused and misinterpreted, is what we're doing today. So let's get into it. The danger of visible symbols in the form of images or statues is that they can become confused and identified with what they are supposed to be symbolizing or pointing to. There's an appropriate axiom familiar to most, which sums up this pretty well. So, by focusing on the finger, we fail to notice the moon, all right, that we're pointing to. In this case, the symbol turns into an idol. We're looking at the finger, that's the moon. We're supposed to be looking at the moon. We're pointing towards the moon. For this reason, we're warned in Christianity and more forcefully in Islam against idolatry. Oh God. But there is nothing intrinsically wrong with idols, even for the serious inquirer into the perennial mysteries. In fact, they can often be of much benefit in providing a focal point for aspiration. For example, Buddhists have found by placing a small bust of Lord Buddha in their homes or their gardens, or Hindus by featuring a painting of Lord Krishna on their wall in their temples. And it bears repeating here that the symbol, all right, turned idol does not become an end in itself, but it acts as a messenger, a reminder, a conduit of a higher principle. However, the tendency for misuse is constant and serious, and it's dangerous. Again, from Manly P. Hall. The hopeless confusion of divine principles with the allegorical figures created to represent and personify them to the limited faculties of the ignorant or the uninitiated is what he says here. So the side note for me about initiation is that this leads many people to believe that they can go somewhere and somebody can initiate them. Has to be earned. So there's no initiation. So let's just say ignorance. So let's start again with that quote from Manly P. Hall. Sorry. The hopeless confusion of divine principles with the allegorical figures created to represent and personify them to the limited faculties of the ignorant has resulted in the most atrocious misconceptions of spiritual truths. Concepts almost as preposterous as these, however, still stand as unyielding barriers to a true understanding of Old and New Testament symbolism. For until man disentangles his reasoning powers from this web of venerated, which means sacred absurdities, in which his mind has lain ensnared for centuries, how can truth ever be discovered? Yes, thank you, Manly. A few glaring cases of such venerated absurdities, Eddie says here. We're going to cover some here to illustrate the nonsense that follows in the wake of the understanding and subsequent misuse of allegories and symbols. Biblical controversies. Let's go straight to the Bible here. The modern world seems to have forgotten the existence of those unwritten teachings which explain satisfactorily the apparent contradictions of the written scriptures. There is, arguably, no finer example of the problems ranging from the acrimony and hostility between friends to outright war caused by dead-letter, literal interpretation of scriptures than the fate suffered by the Holy Bible. The greatest minds of the Jewish and Christian worlds and legendary scientists like Isaac Newton have realized that the Bible, please listen, is entirely a book of allegories, but few others seem to have taken the trouble to investigate its symbols and parables, like Richard Dawkins, who is not short of expletives like bloodthirsty, ethnic cleanser, misogynistic, megalomaniacal, and sadomasochistic, just to name a few, in his wholesale denunciation of the God of the Old Testament and of religion in general. And a perfect example, this is a perfect example of how small mentalities mangle such large truths. Therefore, it has always been the case that the highest teachings were never written down, but they were preserved from one generation to another by word of mouth only. By word of mouth transmission, as mentioned earlier, these instructions were in the form of philosophic keys, by means of which the allegories were made to reveal their hidden significance, as when Moses instituted his mysteries to elected initiates through oral transmission, oral teachings, which could never be written down. All right? These mystic keys to their sacred writings were called by the Jews the Kabbalah. Then in the East, the sacred Vedas were taught orally and only written down in the form of the Upanishads, Brahman as the Puran, as by later generations. Also, the early literature of Buddhism was orally transmitted. Apostolic and prophetic relics as examples of ludicrous associations. A World of Wonders by the French painter and classical scholar Henri Stephen, hope I'm saying that right, was published in 1607. The author mentions a monk of St. Anthony who declared that while in Jerusalem, the patriarch of that city had shown him not only one, but more than one, 2 ribs of the Word made flesh, and some rays of the Star of Bethlehem, but also the snout of a seraph, an angel, that's a seraph, a fingernail of a cherub, and the horns of Moses, and a casket containing the breath of Christ. It's not much different today. To a people believing implicitly in a seraph, sufficiently of the flesh to have its nose preserved. All right, to people like that, the issues of more profound religious philosophy would be probably incomprehensible. It's totally the same today. You should see the comments I get over on TikTok. You should see them. Nor is it difficult to imagine the reaction taking place in the mind of some ancient sage should he hear that a cherub, which according to St. Augustine signifies the evangelists, and according to Hellenistic Jewish philosopher, which is Philo-Judaeus, this means the outermost circumference of the entire heavens. That's what that means. And according to several of the church fathers, it means the wisdom of God. How baffling would it be that that sprouted a fingernail? In the East, we cite the example of Sri Dala Molai Goa, or the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic, located in the palace complex of the former kingdom of Kandy, Sri Lanka. It is a Buddhist temple in the city of Kandy, which is supposed to house the relic of the tooth of Buddha. Right there. The story goes that after the parinirvana state, the nirvana after death, of Gautama Buddha, the tooth relic was preserved in Kalinga and smuggled to the island by Princess Himamali and her husband Prince Dantha on the instructions of her father the king. Now, sometime in the early 4th century, they handed over this tooth, and ever since then, ever since ancient times, this relic has played an important role in local politics because it is believed that whoever holds this tooth holds the governance of the country. Whatever symbolic meaning one wishes to attach to the notion of this particular tooth, it's up to you. What do you think? Is this the Buddha's tooth? Come on, honestly. It's 2023. We're moving forward. Now listen, this is so important. This is animal sacrifice. Please listen. A common jibe hurled at the pagans and ancient cultures such as the Incas, the Aztecs, the Hawaiians, and Egyptians is that in order to appease the gods, they have to sacrifice animals, and in many cases, human beings. This accusation is not without some justification, but it displays complete ignorance regarding the status of ancient cultures during their zenith and in their decline. It was only during the latter period of degeneration and decay that the eternal truths were progressively by degrees corrupted and carnalized. Therefore, unable to understand the metaphysical or philosophical significance. Now, the symbolic meaning of a sacrifice, was taken literally and materialized into a physical ritual of murder perpetrated upon helpless animals and humans. Now, a candidate, that's you, when first entering the precincts of the sanctuary, must offer upon the brazen altar not a poor animal or a bull or a human or a ram, but its correspondence within its own nature. The bull is symbolic of our earthly nature, represented in our own gross constitution, our lower self, our selfish, sensual self, which must be burned up by the fire of our divinity. Isn't that beautiful? Remember the Minotaur. We're speaking here of our own lower nature. The sacrificing of animals, and in some cases human beings, upon the altar of the pagans was the result of their subsequent ignorance concerning the fundamental principle, the underlying sacrifice we must make. They did not realize that their offerings must come from within. That's the hardest thing to do. It has to be us overcoming our own lower nature in order for this to be a genuine sacrifice. In passing, however, Eddie points out that those who sneer at such ancient cultures because of their supposedly uncivilized ignorance, we can't say that that's bad because we're still doing it. We are still doing this horrific, barbaric cruelty, inhumanity, torture, suffering, maiming, selfishness, all of this. We are still doing it today. Look at the Nazis, communist Russia. Look at the war in the Ukraine. Look at Israel and Palestine. Look at those children. We have a long way to go. I don't know what to say. Human nature at its vilest is ever the same in any era, ancient or modern. In summary, Eddie says here, symbolism is an indispensable branch of the occult sciences and one of the keys that must be turned to unlock the mysteries of man and nature. But to reiterate, a complete exposition of the meaning behind symbols and allegories, even if it were possible, is contrary to the principles of any esoteric philosophy. The deeper significance of the symbols is revealed. It's revealed only by profound study, your own study, contemplation, digestion, application. Animal sacrifice is a glaring example of what happens when degeneration sets in and the animating vitality of the rarefied esoteric becomes hardened into the dead letter interpretations of exoteric literalism, with all its ghastly perversions and cruelties. In their zenith, lofty civilizations embodied the noble precepts of the Philosophia Perennis, the perennial philosophy, but when they declined, the principles that were once understood as being entirely metaphysical and spiritual were sorely materialized, the esoteric kernel degenerating into the barbaric exoteric rituals of sacrificing innocent beings, animals and humans. The greater the wisdom upheld, the more it is prone to abomination when fallen. And this is exactly what has happened regarding the civilizations we just talked about. Now, Eddie writes here, as only Eddie does, the degenerate version standing in directly inverse proportion to the noble exposition. Let's say that again. This is very Eddie. the degenerate version standing in directly inverse proportion to the noble exposition. But we must keep asking ourselves, what principle is it in man that irresistibly draws us to symbolism, even though we acknowledge its gross perversion in the hands of the ignorant or the unawakened? This chapter has shown that figurative language, especially symbolism, is a universal key to wisdom. Now that is because it unlocks inner truths and subjective realms of experience that are unreachable to understanding through ordinary thinking. Let's close with Blavatsky here. Symbolism, she writes, the pictorial expression of an idea or a thought. Primordial, ancient writing had at first no characters, but a symbol generally stood for a whole phrase or a sentence. A symbol is thus a recorded parable, and a parable is a spoken symbol. There is nothing more important to do than study these teachings and get them out into the world. That's why Eddie took these out of the societies and the organizations where you have to be a member and it's cult-like. This is for everybody. This is an instruction manual. You can get it online. Get the ebook version if you want, $24.99 in most local currencies. It's Unfolding Consciousness, Exploring the Living Universe and the Intelligent Powers of Nature and Humans. Eddie packs a powerful punch here. He does not hold anything back. If you wonder what was taught in the mystery schools, in the Theosophical diploma course, any of that, it's in here. It's all in here, and it's available for you. That's why I do these book studies every week. They are free. And this is 47. We'll go up to 52. I'll do them weekly until then. And if something else works better for you, let me know. I love you very much, and I'm so grateful for you. I am so grateful for you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you.